take a moment to consider the connections that you have to other people. You're probably thinking about friends, family, colleagues, classmates, neighbors, but I'm going to invite you to consider that you have many more connections than you may think, and seeing those connections is important for you and for humanity. Those close connections are so important. They're part of being human, and actually a part of being a social primate. Finding commonality helps us to have compassion and empathy for others. We also rely on those bonds to teach us everything about being human and being part of the fabric of our communities. Our culture is a fundamental part of the human experience. It's the behaviors, beliefs, traditions, ideas that we learn and pass from generation to generation that help us to navigate and be successful in our environments. Our culture has allowed us to thrive as a species. It's also more distinct across geographic distance than our own genomes. So how similar are we in our genomes? Around 99.9% is shared between any two individuals. And most of that variation is actually shared across all human groups. You may see difference from height to facial features, hair texture to skin pigmentation. But we share a lot more in common than we may realize. I think that learning about the human story is important to help us see connections while also appreciating the variation around us. Why do I think this is important? My name is Laurel Pearson. I'm a geneticist and a member of the faculty in the Department of Anthropology here at Penn State. I'm interested in human variation, not only in terms of our genomes, but also in terms of our traits. Humans are really interesting creatures. We love to make connections. We love to see things in common. So if I show you these objects, how might you connect them? Shape, size, color. In your mind, you have strategies for how you'd connect these things. We do this with people too. We make assumptions based on similarities or dissimilarities that we perceive. Evolutionarily, this was probably really important. Recognizing friend or foe, safe or dangerous. But today, with a population that has boomed from thousands to billions, we have to push ourselves beyond that ingrained framework to see those connections. We all know that seeing differences can prevent us from connecting. But I would argue that with all the people around us we could be connecting to, people we would easily find things in common, those connections have become diminished. Recently, I was telling someone about an observation I made back in my grad school days. This is 20 years or so ago now. Back then, very few people had cell phones, or at least not smartphones. While riding the bus, you would notice people looking around, staring out the window, making eye contact with people boarding the bus, even talking to strangers. My husband loves to joke that I'm obsessed with trying to figure out how I know someone who I have actually never met. I think that I just like to kind of figure out, like, where are they from? Back when I used to ride the bus, I would notice people around town or campus who I'd seen on the bus. I think I was curious about how our lives and schedules intersected. Over time, I noticed that people looked up less and less. They weren't even talking to their friends who might be sitting right next to them. They're now looking at their phones. I'm guilty too. What are we doing on our phones? Texting, scrolling social media, looking up sports stats, connecting with our interests, but not talking to each other. And ironically, that's exactly what telephones were invented to do, talk to each other. Over time, our technological advances have allowed so many things to happen, including these amazing connections to each other. But I'd argue that we may actually be distancing ourselves from some of those important social interactions by having our technology. My sister lives 3 hours from me. Somehow, despite having grown up in central Missouri and moving all over the country and abroad, we ended up in the same state, a few hours apart. Back before everyone had a cell phone, we used to have a set time when we would try to call each other on a landline. For 1 year, when she was in college, and I was in my first post-college job, she lived in Germany while I was in Hawaii, 2 oceans and half a world apart. Being able to connect with her and speak to her seemed amazing. Today, we send each other our Wordle scores and play Friends Connections on Duolingo. I guess we connect more frequently, but I'm not sure it's as meaningful as those calls. And I definitely don't feel the same way as I do when we're able to get together in person. Recently, the Surgeon General warned that we're in an epidemic of loneliness. How can this be with so many people around us and this technology that allows us to communicate? Between a global pandemic and this increasing reliance on our devices, we're missing out on these important opportunities to interact. A 2024 Harvard survey found that among adults, those aged 30 to 44 were the most likely to feel lonely. This was followed by young people, ages 18 to 29. Why is this a problem? Well, loneliness is associated with long-term health consequences, including mental health problems like anxiety and depression. And that was actually reported in greater than 80% of those people who said that they were lonely. Among those things cited as the top contributors to this disconnect were technology, followed by insufficient time with family, and living in a society that's overly individualistic. So how do we bring connection to people who feel lonely? One way that I hope to do this is by sharing the human family tree. In 2018, I piloted a course on ancestry identity that I now teach every semester. Through the course, students learn a little bit about genetics, human evolution, and anthropology in general. They also explore their own ancestries by interviewing relatives to ask about traditions, constructing family trees, and for some, participating in direct consumer ancestry tests. For a few years, at the beginning and end of each semester, I would survey the students to get a sense for how they felt in terms of their belonging. Interestingly, most of the students reported an increasing sense of belonging in the course and their Penn State community by the end of the semester. I attribute this to their ability to see connections. So the last day of the semester, I do an activity with the students. It's called Connecting the Class. From surveys, I ask the students a little bit about their maternal ancestry. So for some people, they may actually have done an ancestry test, and they might have information about their mitochondrial haplotype. This is essentially ancestry that's locked in the mitochondria of the cells. It's also passed from mothers to their offspring. This ancestry stretches much further back on that one side than anything we can detect in our nuclear genome. That DNA you're used to thinking about. If we look at this map, I know it's kind of weird. You're looking down from above, and it's been sort of smushed. So we're seeing the North Pole right in the center, and you see Africa kind of like up there on the left. So if we look at Africa, we notice that there are these branches, these arrows pointing out to different parts of the world. It's like a tree. And along those branches, you notice little letters. And those letters actually represent those different mitochondrial ancestral groups. So that's the thing that some students have. This mirrors what we know about the expansion of humans all over the globe. So for students who don't have information about their genomes, they tell me a little bit about their maternal ancestry as far back as they can. So now we're going to imagine we're in a classroom, broken up like a map, continents spread across the room. Each student has been assigned to a region of the globe based on that information that they provided. We're going to start with the most recent, or some of the most recent people to get to their ancestral homelands, Indigenous Americans, sometime within around the last 20,000 years or so. We're going to move backwards in time, connecting the class together as we go. So we're in the Americas, and we're going to have those students migrate back to Asia to meet their ancestors. Those people in Europe and those now in Asia are going to move back together to the Middle East, where they shared ancestry some 60,000 or so years ago. Some of the first people to move to regions outside of Africa. From there, they're going to migrate back to Africa to meet classmates who represent the earliest maternal ancestors of all humans. This is our homeland. So this activity is an interactive reminder of the connections that we have to each other. At this point, you can imagine, I've actually migrated all the students to me at the front of the class. They're all standing around me as close as they've probably been to each other all semester. At this point, I wrap up by reminding them that they are all connected to each other, that they need to use those things that they can find in common to find kindness for each other. It never fails. At this point, I start to get emotional. I've done this activity over a dozen times now. I think that seeing the work that they've done to find connections is just, makes me so proud. I feel connected to them, and I hope that they see that they're connected to each other, and maybe a little bit to me. So the last assignment of the semester is a reflection journal. The students share a little bit about that experience, looking at their ancestry, and reflect on the course. I'm always encouraged by things that those students share in those assignments. They'll write about things like the connections that they're feeling to their family, seeing similarities that they didn't before, even in people they don't know. With permission, I'd like to share a couple quotes with you from students last semester. So Allie shared, "This class brought me new friends, which helps make Penn State feel a bit smaller. It also helped open my eyes that despite our physical differences, we are all extremely similar and share so much in common simply by being human. I've developed a stronger bond with family members, which is beyond valuable to me." Samantha J. said, "If anyone takes the time to do the research we did in this class and learn that we all stem from ancestors in Africa who migrated from place to place, I think it would make a difference in how we see each other." So I hope that you're all seeing that we're one species that shares common origins. The differences that we notice are a reflection of that movement around the world. We are all relatives. We're all connected. So now, I have a challenge for you. When you leave today, I want you to strike up a conversation with someone you've never met, a stranger, and call, don't text, a friend or family member. Let's work on building and reinforcing our human connections. Thank you.